The program on this very important day. We've spoken a lot over the past 15 months about Israel's war on Gaza. Your reaction right now to this news as we wait for that official confirmation from Qatar of the ceasefire deal?
Yeah, it's positive news. I'm hopeful, but it's important to bear in mind this may not yet come to fruition. There are still some details to be worked out, and Netanyahu does not have the same freedom of action that many people think he has. He has a rather skeptical members in what is a very, very precipitous coalition government, and there are some undefined security terms that I think may happen. So this may be yet another false dawn. I hope it's not, but I think that we should. It's not settled until it's settled.
Oh, David, I know it's you're right. It's. I know people are celebrating. There's so much hope right now, but as you say, this may not come into fruition. It's not settled until it's settled. But if it is, what would this mean, and why do you think it could be settled now? Why wasn't it agreed to when we had what appears to be the very same plan on the table months ago? Why now?
Well, a couple reasons. So people usually settle because they think they've either gotten what they want or what they're going to get if they don't settle is going to be worse than what they've got now. So 8 months ago, I think that there's been a lot of damage to Hamas's military infrastructure from Israel's perspective. From Hamas's perspective, they've seen Israel taking increasing casualties and Israel's focus being directed towards other countries. They've seen missile attacks conducted on Israel from Yemen, from Iran. So the conditions are not what they were 8 months ago, and I think it's important to keep that in mind. The other thing is, as we've talked, you cannot ignore any new national leader, particularly one as unpredictable as Donald Trump, for a finite period of time. People are uncertain what he's going to do, and he actually has more impact than he will have at the end of his term. So that is a factor as well.
And when he said all hell would break out if the hostages weren't released, just what did you read into that, and what could it have been that made, hopefully, and I know you said this may not come into fruition, but let's just be positive and hope it does, for Netanyahu to shift, and also for Hamas to shift?
Yeah, well, bear in mind, there have been 8 months of steady military operations against Hamas. So it's possible in Netanyahu's mind that military conditions that didn't exist 8 months ago exist now. The second thing is, Trump is a master of strategic ambiguity. He's a master of ambiguity. He can say two contradictory things in the same sentence. But people are taking counsel of their fears. I think it's rather similar to the Iranians releasing the hostages they took from the U.S. embassy when Ronald Reagan was coming into power, because they didn't know what he was going to do, and there was a lot of popular press that said that he would, destroy, that he would use nuclear weapons against Iran. That level of ambiguity, that level of fear is very potent at the start of an administration, but it declines over time as people get used to seeing how the administration operates. But it is a very real factor.
The level of fear. And what's your assessment on just how weakened both Israel and Hamas are after 15 months of Israel's war on Gaza?
Yeah, well, I think if you look from Netanyahu's perspective, if you're going to make the case to say people like Ben-Gvir, he would say, look, we've achieved most of our goals in Hamas. Hamas doesn't have the ability to launch large rocket strikes in Israel or attack in Israel. Meanwhile, we've destroyed Lebanese Hezbollah as an offensive force, and we've seen Bashar al-Assad's Syria, which was the key to resupplying Hezbollah and moving weapons on our border. They're gone. So we can make an agreement now and stop the steady, small but steady Israeli losses without compromising our security. I think that is probably the calculus and the argument that Netanyahu is going to deploy against his hardliners to try to get this approved. Meanwhile, they have other challenges. Iran has basically routinized missile strikes on Israel, both from Iran and from the Houthis. So I think he can make the case that they need to shift against bigger enemies and let this agreement, which hardliners will view as unacceptable, but let this one simmer and play out and focus on existential threats to Israel.
David, thank you very much indeed. David de Roches from the National Defence University. Always a pleasure to speak to you, especially today on what is such a momentous occasion, our breaking news.